In the past decade and a half, Perth Scorchers have become a West Australian sporting giant. A behemoth off the field, cricketing power that has almost outgrown its own league, they have record crowds week in, week out, and are one of the country's most recognisable brands. They've also become a title-winning machine on the field. But this summer, they missed the mark. The Scorchers won just 4 of their 10 matches. They lost games at home. They lost games because they couldn't close out matches, couldn't close out innings, and couldn't string 20 good overs together. Yet, just like the old Scorchers, they still put up a fight, in a weird way. After their gut-wrenching loss to Sydney Thunder, where they were rolled for just 97, it all looked done and dusted. Then it emerged they needed 6 unlikely results to go their way. Hobart beat the Renegades, tick. The Sixers beat the Strikers, tick. The Hurricanes beat the Heat, tick, but only with the final ball. And then in one super Saturday, the Renegades beat the Heat, and the Scorchers, in front of another bumper Optus Stadium turnout, beat the Strikers. Then their 6-leg, 34-1 long shot fell at the final hurdle. On the final night, the Hurricanes lost to the Stars, who slapped 220 on them as they picked their Australian white ball bowler and captain, Nathan Ellis, only for him to bowl just 1 over. It was a disappointing end, but it was probably what the Scorchers deserved. They just didn't get things happening with the bat this season. 5 different players opened the batting, and hit-and-miss import Finn Allen was the only one who did it in every game. Aaron Hardie, 12 months ago their most dependable batter, made 120 runs at 17.14. Inspirational captain Ashton Turner scored 66 in a losing cause against Sydney, but it was the only half-century he made. Josh Inglis, injured while on international duty, played just 2 games. Mitch Marsh, dropped while on international duty, played just 1. The famed bowling attack failed to fire 2. AJ Tye went at 44.2 with the ball and fell out of favour. Matt Kelly, 44.6, and was also dropped. Jai Richardson was called into Australia's squad and then sent off for surgery, and even Jason Behrendorff, who became the league's leading wicket taker, and the lightning-fast Lance Morris, couldn't pull it off every match. Cooper Connolly may well be named the player of the tournament, and rightly so. Sam Fanning was a find late in the season, and Marley Beardman is so exciting. Those 3 are the future of a squad about to undergo maybe its most radical change yet. New contracting rules meant the club could have just 10 players signed to its books as of last night. It leaves Nick Hobson, Tye, Behrendorff, and even Marsh to become free agents for 10 days after the Big Bash League's final. Right before Sunday night's signing deadline, the club contracted Ashton Agar, the stingiest bowler in this tournament, to a 3-year deal. But it doesn't look like Tye will be back later this year. The West understands the greatest wicket taker in club history has been told he won't be needed next season, and the fan favourite and clubman took time to recognise supporters on Saturday night. Behrendorff has strong interest from Melbourne Renegades. It's understood they have offered a multi-year deal that would make the left-arm swing king one of their highest paid players. Scorchers are keen to keep him, but he will weigh up multiple offers. And even Mitch Marsh, a man who tells us he is as Perth Scorchers as they come, has interest from interstate. It's going to be a new look Scorchers when they return for next summer. The key for Adam Voges is to make it a Scorchers side that bounces back fast. There is no time or patience for rebuilds in the Big Bash.
And joining me now in studio is Jackson Barrett. Jacko, welcome. What a crazy weekend that was.
Hello, mate. Yeah, just kind of kept getting weirder and weirder until one night that had nothing to do with the Scorchers, but decided their season. It was a strange one.
It was a crazy last few days, right? Yeah. Like we thought this time last week, it was done and dusted. The Scorchers season was over. There was no way this 34-1 multi of 6 straight results was going to happen. And then one by one, it started becoming, oh, hang on, they're still alive here.
At what point did you start thinking, oh, this is doable now? Because for me, I think it was the Heat Hurricanes game that took it into Saturday. Sure. That was the one for me where I was like, oh, this is a thing now. Like,
once you got down to the final 3, with one of them being the Scorchers themselves, of course, you go, okay, that's only 2 other results you need to go their way. That's doable.
I thought they were a little bit stitched up last night by the Hurricanes. I actually think their biggest issue out of all of it was the Friday night game, which didn't actually affect their ladder placings, but what it did mean, it was washed out between the Sixers and the Thunder, and it meant that neither of those sides could challenge the Hurricanes for top spot. The Hurricanes then bowled Nathan Ellis, who plays for Australia and is their captain.
He is.
And is a very good white ball bowler.
He bowled a great first over.
Took
1 for 3.
He said to himself, hold it there, Nathan. You're all sweet for the night. And we proceeded to watch Cam Gannon bowl slot stuff for the rest of the night, and they put 220 on them.
Yeah.
It was always going to be pretty
tough
tough
from
from
bowling
there.
4 overs. So, yeah, that was a little bit, for Scorchers fans who were watching, thinking, why aren't we seeing more of Nathan Ellis, who is the star of this bowling attack.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a stitch up. But as well for Perth, if you leave it in the hands of others and it doesn't mean anything to them, that's the risky run.
If you want a job done right, do it yourself.
Yeah.
One of the players were together watching it last night as well. There's a picture of them at Andrew Tyer's place in the paper today. They were on a 10 a.m. flight, so everything was hanging in the balance for them last night, but not to be. So it's the third time in club history they've missed the finals. The first time for 5 years that they've missed the finals. So it's a bit of a different feeling about it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're so used to them being successful, for them being contenders, and that's. I don't know if that was part of the thinking with Hobart last night. As you say, obviously they didn't have anything to play for, but there would have naturally been conversations amongst the Hobart guys about who would we rather see in the finals here, Melbourne Stars or Perth Scorchers? And there's always that fear factor with the Scorchers going, do we really want to let these guys in? Do we, given the experience, given the winning culture, do we really want to let these guys into the finals?
It's true, but the Stars are the team on a heater.
That's true.
And they've got that stacked middle order with Maxwell, Stoinis, Cartwright, Bo Webster, and Ben Duckett was there for a period of the tournament. And they, for me, always felt like the side, like if they get it right, it could be anything. And now it feels like it could actually be anything. They've obviously got a knockout final against the Sydney Thunder, which obviously makes things tough. It's still a long road for them, but they're kind of like the wild card team now, which was, I feel like we might have been saying that about any team that snuck into fourth, because as of Saturday morning, literally any team could play finals and win the title. So the Stars move on, the Scorchers all done. Should we pick it apart a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's have a look at what went right, I think, to start with.
Okay.
And the big one is probably Cooper Connolly.
Absolutely.
He's a decent chance, as you've written this morning, to be named the player of the tournament. And I think the big thing with Cooper this season, as opposed to the last couple of years, is he stood up in a couple of really big moments last year, but it was, clearly the season before with the final, but this was the week in, week out, he's become like the reliable guy in that top and middle order. That was a big change, wasn't it?
Yeah, and kind of had a couple of different modes with the bat as well. Like he hit 19 sixes for the season, but was also really reliable down the stretch, a real steady hand down the stretch. We saw it on Saturday when he sort of got them home. We saw it in another run chase as well. I forget which game, but how he got them home when they had sort of 4 or 5 wickets to spare. So showed a lot of maturity for a guy who, again, is only 21. Took 6 wickets with the ball as well. So he was undoubtedly far and away their biggest bright spot.
I think the other thing, they started the tournament expecting Cooper to bat in the middle order, and with selections and with Josh Inglis being in the Australian squad, a couple of things just didn't go their way there, and the imports not firing early. They certainly didn't expect him to be batting in what they call the engine room at 3 and 4. He started at 3. Once Aaron Hardie / very briefly Mitch Marsh came back into the side, he went back down to 4. But this was a guy that was meant to be kind of fine-tuning his game at like a 6 or a 7 in tandem with Ashton Turner and Nick Hobson this season. And he was thrown into that deep end. Like that call was made literally days before their first game, and he played that role all season and played it really well. And it was like you mentioned, the gears. And I think we saw those gears in games as well. Even the Strikers game on Saturday found the going pretty tough when he came to the crease, and him and Ashton Turner were genuinely had to do some graft. But then later on in the innings, they took the surge. They had their bowlers that they were going after, and he was able to put the foot down a little bit. And then, of course, as we know, because he's off to Sri Lanka, he's in Dubai at the moment on a training camp with Australia. He's a 3-facet cricketer. He's excellent in the field. His running between wickets is superb. So fascinating that no Scorcher has ever been named player of the tournament.
Don't you think that's amazing?
It's amazing.
They're the only franchise who don't have one.
And isn't it a little bit telling that about their the even contribution history of the club that the year that they've gone no good is the year that they're going to get one.
Yeah, true. And I mean, in similar vein, talking about the hits for the year,
if
I told you 5 weeks ago that Jason Behrendorff would be the leading wicket taker in the comp, and Ashton Agar would have the best economy rate of any bowler in the comp, but Perth would still miss the finals. You turn around and go, what? But that's what happened, right? They were two really good bright spots. We've seen Ashton Agar, as you reported yesterday, is re-upping. Jason Behrendorff's future is a little bit more unclear, as I'm sure we'll talk about shortly, but 2 really good bright spots with those 2 veterans of the ball.
Yeah, Agar's economy has been incredible this season because that control element of his game, he'd actually lost a little bit in recent years. So his economy this season was less than 6. It was 5.83, which is remarkable for a guy that has to come in and bowl that tricky over after the power play that they try and race through a little bit, bowl sort of through the middle overs where guys are set. I thought he was super, super impressive. He didn't take a massive amount of wickets. He took 6 wickets, the same as Cooper Connolly, but I thought the value that he brought in control in those middle overs clearly spins the ball away from the right-hander, so that's really valuable. But guys had found a way to get after him in the last couple of seasons, and his economy had been through the roof. It had been like above, like 8s and 9s for a lot of the last couple of years. The other thing that was nice with Ashton Agar, it was only one real one, but I thought that 50 against the Renegades at Optus Stadium just kind of kick-started him with the bat a little bit. He hadn't made a score we hadn't made a half century for, I think it was 6 seasons, which we kind of see Ashton Agar as this guy that can, they've trusted him at 7 at times. They always back him in at 8 to make a contribution to the batting order, but that's just not something he's actually been able to do in the last few years. So for a guy who has knocked back a WA contract to turn his attention to T20 cricket, but is probably on the outer with the Australian setup, it feels like we might have a bit of a resurgent Ashton Agar in the next couple of years. And yeah, a 3-year deal with the Scorchers now means that his future is well and truly committed here. And it's a big call because, as we'll get onto in a sec, it leaves a couple of guys out in the cold.
Who else are you giving pass marks to for their seasons for Perth? So Ashton Turner's in the frame, Lance Morris in the frame. Anyone else?
Yeah, Lance Morris in the frame. I think, as I mentioned off the top in the editorial, the nature of the Scorchers season has been that they haven't been able to string 20 good overs together.
Yep.
And on that kind of consistency theme, like Morris has been wayward at times. Turner took a little while to get going with the bat, but we did see the best of them a little bit later in the tournament. So Morris took back-to-back 3-fers, copped a bit of tap, particularly early on Saturday against the strikers from Kerry and Short.
Yeah, way back. Yep.
So I think that's just something that Morris is going to have to work through. White ball cricket isn't something that I think comes overly natural to him because, like as has been well documented over the last couple of years, this guy is basically just one that comes in and bowls as fast as he can, and the accuracy and control and some of the tricks up his sleeve have been something that he's added to over the past couple of seasons as he's grown in this format. I think he's got a real future. Like he's locked in. He's one of 10 players locked in at the Scorchers, so they're clearly backing him. And he's a genuine wicket-taking option. It's just at times he kind of went missing a little bit in that control sense that we spoke about with Agar. Ashton Turner, just the 1 half century for the season, which I think clearly is coming in a little bit later in the innings, but I think that would be a little bit disappointing for them. And there have been uncharacteristic Scorchers losses where they haven't been able to chase those trickier scores that they have been in the last couple of seasons. Clearly they are historically this incredible defending team with the ball, but it's probably slept on a little bit in those 2 championship years just how good they were chasing, particularly in big games. And Turner was key to that, and there were big games where they just weren't quite able to get it done this season. And we had that flurry of wickets in the middle order, particularly with Hardie, who really struggled, and Turner and Hobson as well, who were guys that were a little bit hit and miss. I think Hobson probably gets over the line for a pass mark.
Yep.
I think
average 30.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting one come free agent, this new free agency period, just because I haven't heard him linked anywhere as such, but I just think you've got this guy now that is really fine-tuned this role and is a really specific role player, which is great because this guy was a club cricketer looking to make it in the red ball staff, pretty good 50-over player, and a few years ago he went away and just turned himself into a finisher, and now he's starting to crack it on the T10 and T20 circuit, and he's played a nice role for the Scorchers. So, yeah, I think he would be pretty happy with his season. And then the other one is probably the 3 newest members of this squad. So Marley Beardman showed something on Saturday against the Strikers.
Yep.
He's really exciting. It was a tough initiation for him out at the showgrounds on a lowie out there, but looked really good once he could kind of unleash it at Optus. Was hitting low to mid 140s, which we know he can do. And then Sam Fanning as well. Sam Fanning's got mightily stitched up twice by Aaron Hardie in the running between wickets department.
That wasn't great on Saturday.
I know Hardie owed him a few beers before Saturday over the Sydney Thunder one. So I would imagine those debts have grown further. Put the handbrake on a couple of times on him. Yeah. But they really like Fanning. They see him as a potential long-termer at the top of the order. I think the thing that people have slept on a little bit is just how hard he hits a cricket ball. Like he was a real grafter when he came into the Shield side, but has added that power game. I remember started last season watching him in a practice match against the Scorchers where he was essentially like an uncontracted top-up player. And he scored a quick fire 40 or something and hit the ball harder than I'd ever seen at Shield level. He then debuted in a final at the end of last year and went really well and had to wait his turn this year as they kind of rifled through a few openers. But yeah, really like the look of Sam Fanning. I think he was 21 off 7 balls against the Strikers on the weekend and then probably was in a position to go on with it. Looked as if he would. And then the other one is actually Matt Spores. So Spores was the last player contracted to the Scorchers. It's a really cool story. He was on the WA rookie list as a teenager, came off it, played international cricket for Canada, moved to Adelaide to play some grade cricket and try and crack another state deal.
The traditional path.
The traditional path.
Yeah.
Came back to Perth and was the Ollie Cooley medalist last year in grade cricket for Scarborough. Just dominated for Scarborough and forced his way into this side. Bowls like Rashid Khan, they call him Temu Rashid Khan at the Scorchers, which is really good.
That's great.
And I mean, the bowling needs some work, but the fact that, I mean, when was the last time the Scorchers picked 2 spinners at Optus Stadium? But Spores' batting has been strong enough over the last few weeks that they felt like they could back him in at 7 as their best option as an actual number 7. So,
yeah, I did note that the fact that they trusted him over Ashton Agar, who, as you said, had regained some confidence with the bat coming down the stretch of Saturday night's game, that was telling.
So he's a genuine all-rounder. I feel like the way that they use him with the ball probably needs some fine-tuning, but I would be shocked if he doesn't end up with another deal. And I think if it's not at the Scorchers, he will follow a long line of Scorchers second spinners in going elsewhere if they don't pick him up again.
One last hit before we move on to the misses, if you will. Scorchers fans, unreal.
So good.
Almost 42,000 there on Saturday. We were talking about this off air before, to a game that when most of those fans left their homes was looking like it was probably going to be a dead rubber in terms of their finals hopes. Didn't turn out that way. But a really strong crowd, and that was a theme through the 5 home games. Yeah,
it's incredible watching it compared to watching other games. Like it's like a different sport. And I kind of feel sometimes like the Scorchers are almost at risk of being a bigger brand than the Big Bash. Like their passionate following here is just like nothing that the competition is getting elsewhere. Like we talk about, there's a home final, a Sydney Thunder home final at the Showgrounds, and there's a Hobart home final at Bellerive Oval, and they combined probably won't reach what we saw for this Scorchers game on Saturday night. The potential dead rubber.
Dead rubber, yes.
So I wrote this last week, but I have a feeling league bosses would be pulling their hair out over the fact that the Scorchers aren't there. It's probably something that they've been accustomed to, and the numbers around average finals crowds with and without the Scorchers are startling. Yeah. So well done to the Scorchers fans. They kept showing up, and I had a feeling they may have dropped off, but they just didn't.
Let's move on to the misses. Do you want to start with the imports?
Yeah, let's start with the imports.
I think that's probably where we need to start, right? I think so, even the most ardent of Scorchers fans would suggest they didn't quite get that right this season.
I've just got a feeling the Scorchers have spent the last few years trying to outsmart the draft. Like it felt like they were kind of like the anti-draft club.
They've shown the draft some serious disdain.
And they kind of tried to trick it. Remember the first year they passed on their first rounder, and then this time around they signed Finn Allen for 2 years outside of the draft with the new international like multi-year contracting rules, and then it meant that they just didn't have the salary cap to bring in Laurie Evans. So they would have loved Laurie Evans in that middle order this year. Laurie Evans would have loved to be in Orange this year. But they made a call on availability with Finn Allen. So under those rules, because Allen's contracted on a multi-year deal, he has to make himself available for every game. And the Scorchers valued that over what we saw from Evans, which was brilliant, right up until he had to leave before the finals. So that kind of explains that call, because I know that the Finn Allen call has frustrated a lot of people, or the Laurie Evans side of it has. But that's essentially what that came down to. So, not quite the season that he would have liked, of course. 10 innings, 181 runs, striking at 185 which is clearly the
there's
upside.
no problem with the strike
yeah,
rate.
Like that's clearly the upside and what it
games.
could be. But it just didn't come off otherwise. 2 half centuries in the middle part of the season where it just looked like he might have found himself.
Sure.
And then a couple of really frustrating dismissals. The one against the Thunder at the showgrounds where he kind of just spooned one to cover. Like really liked the pace on in the first over, and then Nathan McAndrew came on in the second, and it looked like Finn Allen was just willing the ball to come at him 15 Ks faster, and it wouldn't, and he spooned it to cover. Like those sort of ones are a little bit frustrating. Clearly, like he's a kamikaze sort of batter, and you've got to take the good with the bad, but there was more bad than good to a frustrating level. And then I think where they were kind of trying to trick the draft a little bit this season was going with Keaton Jennings, who has never played T20 cricket or, short form cricket outside of England, and Matt Hurst, who had played about 8 games in the 100. So these were guys that essentially spotted largely by Simon Kadich. Simon Kadich was Matt Hurst's coach at the Manchester Originals in the 100. Kat is part of their kind of this global network of ex-WA and ex-Scorchers linked guys that kind of help point them in the right direction with players, but I just don't think either of them were experienced enough in the format. Hurst came out as like an opener and a second option with the gloves. A lot of people then thought that he should have been given a go down the order, but he'd never done it before, so he wasn't going to be able to dislodge anyone else down the order, and he found himself out of the side. And Keaton Jennings, I mean, he just never really got out of the blocks. He played 3 innings, he scored 48 runs. I had some confidence around Keaton Jennings, and I thought like a taller guy in a Zach Crawley kind of way might have been able to get on top of the bounce a little bit at Optus. Really experienced cricketer, has played in Australia before, has played at Optus before. So I had relatively high hopes that they might have found a bit of a bargain with Keaton Jennings, but that didn't work out either. Clearly, the Scorchers put a really high price on culture guys as well, and by all reports, and with my brief dealings with both of them, like good fellas, good around the group, that sort of thing, but just weren't bringing enough on the field. And I think in hindsight, they would probably admit that perhaps an international bowler would have been the way to go. I think they've been so well set up in this bowling unit over the last couple of years, basically since David Willey left it. They obviously had David Payne briefly a couple of years ago, but it's not really something that they've looked at. But I just thought, I think it would have added an extra element to the bowling attack. I feel like in a lot of games, they kind of carried 4 overs a little bit. At times it was Andrew Tye, at times it was Matt Kelly, who just never really got going in the tournament. Sometimes it was like the 2nd or 3rd spin overs that guys were able to get after. I just feel like an international bowler would have been able to add an extra little bit of element to that. And they've had success with them before. Like David Willey's helped win them titles. Yasser Arafat's helped win them titles. Alfonso Thomas going way back. Like I just think having that extra option there and something that guys haven't seen before would have been the way to go. So in hindsight, I think that's probably how they might have played it with the internationals.
Okay, so just on that import strategy in terms of valuing availability, valuing the fact that you're going to be here for the whole thing. I mean, is that with their season this year? Is that a case of the operation was a success, but the patient died kind of vibes, where it's like, because I really like that strategy of let's have someone who's here, let's have guys who are here for the whole summer. I think it'd be different if it was they're going to miss the first portion and then they're going to be here down the stretch, but it doesn't make much sense to have guys here for 3/4 of the tournament and they're missing when you need them the most. So I actually really like that strategy. Did they just pick the wrong guys? Is that fair to say?
I think so. Yeah, I think that definitely is fair to say. And if you think about, like, hypothetically, if they were to have snuck into a final, they lose Cooper Connolly. We were, like, probably, I understand Mitch Marsh was leaning towards not playing in a final, and then you would have had Finn Allen come out of that side as well in that hypothetical situation. And then you're back where you were last year, last year it was Marcus Harris out of nowhere as a replacement player and debuting, and Sam Fanning debuting, and Sam Whiteman playing his first game for the second game for the club in 4 years or something. So that was a mess last year. That was a complete mess, and they were really, really keen to avoid that. So, yeah, I just think it was, like a lot of things in the Scorchers setup this year, I think it was execution rather than planning that was the problem.
Yeah. What are some of the other misses when it comes to what went wrong?
I think one of the disappointing ones, and partly with this guy is that he wasn't ever able to get his body completely right until the very end. But Aaron Hardie last year was the really reliable engine room guy for them, and he shared that 3 and 4 role with Josh Inglis that he shared with Cooper Connolly this year. And Cooper was firing, but Hardie just could never get going. So he came in off a quad injury, so he missed a few games. He played 7. He scored 120 runs at 17.14. So it's just nowhere near what you're after for your number 3 who's played international cricket, has experience at that higher level. Remember last year he took over the captaincy reins, and while I don't think that was entirely for him, he found a way to work through it and still play some really good cricket. And the interruptions, I'm sure, are a factor, but he just didn't look as confident over the ball. He didn't look as confident playing spin. He was caught on the crease heaps by all sorts of different bowlers, and he just didn't look like a guy that was coming out to dominate the game. He just didn't have that presence about him, whereas Connolly did for a lot of the season. So I think there will be some frustrations around that. I know Aaron, he was up for press the other day, and he seems to have diagnosed a lot of those things, or is in the process of doing that and working really hard, because for him next is the Champions Trophy. So he's in Australia's squad for that. He's a decent chance to be used, I would suggest, at different stages. So that's what's next for him, and it'll be really interesting to see how that goes, because he's just kind of battled away here a little bit. He had the quad to start the season, and then on Boxing Day, went to play that reverse sweep against the Heat and hurt his abdomen. Oh, sorry, it was in the Thunder game after that on Jan 3. And then he actually got up and played, didn't miss any games with that injury, but I feel like that probably just pushed back his timeline for bowling. And we didn't actually see him bowl until I think he bowled 2 overs on Saturday night, and that was the first time he'd bowled all season. I would have pulled the trigger on him bowling against the Thunder at the Showgrounds in that second last game. We understand that he was available to bowl then. Okay. He just wasn't used. So I think Aaron Hardie's probably one of the really big frustrations.
And then availability-wise, obviously you mentioned Mitch Marsh there, faced 1 ball for the tournament. Inglis only played the 2 games.
Yep.
And then to lose Jai Richardson as well, he only played 5.
Yeah.
Even if you just get most of the season out of 1 or 2 of those guys, it might look a little bit different.
Yeah, I think you can make a case for Inglis being their most important player last season and one of the year before. Clearly, he was destined for bigger things, but I'm sure there are frustrations where he is running water and then sub-fielding and does his calf on Boxing Day in the Boxing Day test, and then misses the rest of the season. Cricket Australia massively cautious with contracted guys. So Inglis is one of them, and his recovery is managed by them with the Sri Lanka test tour in mind. So he was never any genuine chance of getting back to play. Interesting to note that they didn't actually replace him with a domestic player. And then Jai Richardson is a bizarre one. His workload is managed by Cricket Australia at the best of times because he's so injury prone. Mm-hmm. And then he was called up into the test squad, which was fantastic. Good to see him back around that. And then this shoulder issue has been one that is lingering. And my understanding is that discussions ramped up around what's next for Jai Richardson, and that was with the Ashes in mind. I would imagine those conversations kind of ramped up while he was with the test squad. And the call was made to go and have surgery on his troublesome shoulder with the Ashes in mind, to try and be fit for the Ashes. Now, part of that decision was clearly Jai felt that, and this decision did not involve the Scorchers or WA Cricket at all. It was something that they were told about.
So there's literally no conversation with WA Cricket. They just get CC'd.
Not until it was done.
Yeah,
not until it was done.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, Jai went out with a week to go in the tournament. 2 games, 2 games left, and a final series if they'd made it. The concern was that if the Scorchers had run deep into the finals, that's 2 weeks that he wouldn't have got back on the other end of his recovery, and if the schedule fell the wrong way, he could have missed 2 Shield games that would have prepared him for the Ashes. So that's why that decision was made. I know that there'd been growing frustration in WA Cricket around his handling through the first half of the Shield season. And while they won't say it publicly, I feel like this is kind of cherry on top sort of stuff. They
understand that.
Want to create Australian cricketers. They want to see Jai Richardson play in the Ashes series. But with 10 days to go or whatever it was before the end of the season, that was a painful one. Then the other one's Mitch Marsh, which is a funny one because they wouldn't have budgeted for any Mitch Marsh. at the start of the season. Like in an ideal world, Mitch plays the 5-test series against India. He plays really well. And then there's that like 2-week block where some Australian players came back, but not all. And with his injury issues that he was battling at the start of the test summer, I understand he's still managing some kind of an ankle issue.
Huge workload, fresh family.
Big workload, newborn baby like a week or two before the first test. There's no way that he was going to play these extra games. The door opened there because he was dropped for the Sydney test. He's not going to Sri Lanka. But he is just not in the headspace to be playing cricket by the sounds of it. I mean, he went into an Australian camp. I think it was about 6 or 7 days after his partner gave birth to their first child, and then was in camp for the rest of it. I know that his family were in Melbourne for Boxing Day. I believe they came home once he got dropped for Sydney. So he was in camp for however long by himself mostly. And then, test career potentially over, probably over, and then had to come back and get back into it and kicked one on middle, first ball back. So I think that I'm pretty sure he was keen. Well, I know he was keen to get back around the group, be a part of it all. I think that golden duck that night just took it out of him, and he basically parked it. I don't think he would have played if they'd made the finals either. So be interesting to see what's next for Mitch Marsh, even more broadly. Like at what point, how long do his test hopes keep flickering for? Like, does he play Shield cricket in the back end? My gut is no, but then he like that would be his test hopes over. You'd think if he misses the last few rounds of the Shield season, with play some 1 days for WA, when's he actually going to get back into playing cricket again? So really interesting time for Mitchell.
Yeah. So talk us through the contract situation for the Scorchers now. So they've locked away the 10 players that they needed to lock away by Sunday night as we record this. Who are those 10 guys? Who's on the outer, and what does it mean for them going forward?
So the new contracting rules mean that they could only lock away 10 guys as of last night, and then from the day after the Big Bash League final for 10 days, anyone not signed up to a club essentially becomes free agents. So all clubs have between 8 and 10 guys locked away as it stands at the moment. For the Scorchers, it's a pretty strong group. So Jai Richardson, Lance Morris, Josh Inglis, Ashton Agar, who was the last of those, Aaron Hardie, Ashton Turner, who's on a 4-year deal, which is the longest anywhere in the league, Marley Beardman, Cooper Connolly, Matt Kelly, and Finn Allen are the 10. So
pretty strong 10.
It's a pretty strong 10. Yep. I mean, it's a 10 that will come pretty close next year to being your 10 of your starting 11, you would think. So in that regard, they're in a pretty good place. The Agar deal, which was announced on Sunday morning, but it was signed pre-game on Saturday morning, is the really interesting one because he was the last of the unsigned guys. Remember, Agar doesn't have a contract with WA Cricket anymore. He's actually from Victoria, and there was some interest from the Renegades there as well. So
Also, we should say the Renegades have interest in everyone.
They do have interest in a lot of guys.
They watched you play on Saturday. They put out some feelers.
Yeah, so. I don't know. Yeah, there was some interest there. The guys that are on the outer, the big names are Jason Behrendorff, Andrew Tye, Nick Hobson, Mitch Marsh is the biggest of those names, and Sam Fanning is another that you would think probably gets another deal at the Scorchers once they're allowed, once that embargo lifts and they're allowed to do that. So the decision was really between Agar or Jason Behrendorff. Now, Behrendorff has interest from, believe it or not, the Renegades as well. Really strong interest. I understand they've offered a multi-year deal that would make him one of their highest few paid players, and that's a side with Adam Zampa and Jake Fraser-McGurk and Tim Seifert and guys like that. So some decent coin is on offer by the sounds of it. And I think the call that they've made is basically that they feel like as good as Behrendorff is and as effective as he's been in the power play, Ashton Agar is harder to replace. We spoke about his batting, which spoke about that he spins the ball away from a right-hander, that he bowls valuable overs, that his economy's come down. I think when they weighed up those two guys, they saw Agar as being the harder one to replace, which is really, really interesting. I feel like if they were to replace Ashton Agar, you'd probably have to look at an international spinner to do that. So obviously they were pretty keen to do that. 3 years feels a long time for Agar, but I would imagine that was just a part of locking him down. So he becomes swallowed up in the 10 that are locked away, good to go. They can finish this period with 12 contracted players. Now, they can be their own players or they can be players from elsewhere. I think players from elsewhere that would be, I just have a little bit of a watch on going to this, is Joel Paris. So a WA boy, left armour. I think if Behrendorff goes, and there's a real possibility that he does because the Scorchers are going to have to come pretty close to matching this Renegades deal,
sure.
I think Joel Paris would be the one in line to come home. He becomes a free agent at the Melbourne Stars.
Coming off a good season.
He's
decent economy, yeah.
Yeah, and his white ball stuff for WA, clearly they know him well. They watch him closely. He hasn't played a lot of white ball cricket for WA, but when he has, it's been really effective, and his shield stuff has been great. They're a guy, they manage his workload as part of WA cricket, so he'd come into this like 12-month cycle of the Scorchers into WA, and he's really effective. So I think there's a big watch on him. Watch on another couple of guys, or another guy is Cameron Bancroft. I would keep an eye on. He's been away for a few years with the Sydney Thunder. I just think, he wanted that little bit of extra money at the time that was kind of being swallowed up by these big Scorchers names. I think as the Scorchers regenerate, there's a decent chance that Bancroft comes home. It hasn't quite worked out for him at the Thunder. He obviously had that clash earlier in the season at Optus and didn't play the back half. So that's just like a little one to flag. And then I think going the other way, it was reported last night that this Melbourne Stars have some interest in Mitch Marsh. I'm pretty sure that's just preliminary stuff, and that it would still take quite a lot to lure Mitch Marsh away from the Scorchers. And it would take a lot of their cap space as they also chase guys like Tim David and a couple of others. So that's an interesting one. We spoke about Hobson before. I feel like Hobson is the one of these free agents that teams are really going to look at. He is this perfect 6'7" guy, finisher, hits a big ball, really clean strike, like one of the cleanest strikers of a cricket ball getting around in the competition at the moment, and has done it in big games time after time for the Scorchers. Probably wouldn't demand an awful lot of his salary cap. And now that he's on the circuit, I feel like he might be there for the taking in this period. So there's a watch on him as well. Andrew Tye won't be at the Scorchers next year, is my understanding.
It's that definitive?
Yeah. He was waving goodbye to supporters the other night. I think he is done. He's the greatest wicket taker in Scorchers history. So a significant contribution to the club. That's not to say he won't play elsewhere next season. I'd say there's a chance that's on the table, but he's 38, so he will be the one that'll shake out not at the club next year, is my understanding.
Okay, so getting back to Behrendorff just for a second in particular, because I'll try and speak for Scorchers fans who are listening to this thinking about Behrendorff, who, as we said before, leading wicket taker in the comp this season. It's been a stalwart for 12 years at the Scorchers. The two most successful clubs in the BBL, Scorchers, Sydney Sixers, both have that core, that stability, that consistency, the familiarity of who's going to be there.
Yeah.
You look at the Sixers, Philippi at the top, Enriques and Silk in the middle order, Sean Abbott with the ball, Dwarshuis with the ball, and they sort of build around that.
Yeah.
Behrendorff has been such a big part of that attack, coming off a great season. Why wouldn't Perth want to match a 2-year deal and go back to that and run it back with a guy who's been so successful? Is it purely going to be a money
I think it's going to be a money thing. Yeah. So I believe that they're keen to keep Jason Behrendorff. The problem is that they had to make a call on one or the other, Agar or Behrendorff, and run the gauntlet with one, basically.
Sophie's choice.
Yeah. So that's basically what it's come down to. I believe that they would like both of them to be there next year. It's just that they only had one spot left in their contracting setup once they'd nailed down all the other guys that they wanted.
Sure.
And then this is kind of what they're left with. So, yeah, the risk is that a big money offer comes from one of them. I think they're going to have to stump up big time if they were to keep him. But I think they will make a fist of it. And then it comes into obviously like the loyalty factor. He's been a club stalwart. He's been a stalwart of Western Australian setups over the last few years. But he's also another one that doesn't have that year-round tie to WA cricket now, because he knocked back a full-time WA deal to give him some flexibility for 12 months of the year playing around the world. So that's the other thing to factor in. And I think the other element of this contracting period is that, and we spoke about this again the other day, is guys don't have to pack up their lives like you do if you're an AFL player or if you're moving for a state deal. This is a 6 or 8 week thing.
Yep.
Clubs put you up in hotels. Clubs put your family up in hotels. You can come home early when you're playing here. I know Cam Bancroft was here days before the Sydney Thunder played at Optus. Like, there's some real flexibility around the Big Bash to make your life work around it.
Yep.
There's not that much to consider by way. I'm sure there's plenty to consider personal life-wise when you've got children and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
you're not pulling your kids out of school for a year.
No,
kind of thing.
no, you're not. So I think that's another element to consider as well. I think they'd really like him to be there. Just to circle back quickly to the guys that are in the 10, I think there's still a little bit of a watch on Matt Kelly. There's been some interstate interest in Matt Kelly before. I know you mentioned the Sixers. I know they've been keen. And thinking about the Sixers today, you would think that Sean Abbott's probably tracking towards a national contract. We know in WA that once you've got a national contract as a fast bowler, your workload can be managed to the nth degree and your availability could be anything. Ben Dorshus as well.
Had a great
summer. Is around the mark in international stuff. So I feel like that would be a fit as a fourth seamer sort of thing. They've been interested in him before.
Okay. So that would involve a trade? How does that work?
Yeah, so because he's contracted, that would involve a trade. We don't see a lot of them.
We don't.
Wes Agar was traded from the Strikers to the Thunder for Alex Ross, and the Stars and Renegades were in a trade that included Zampa and Sam Harper.
Is this going to be the start of BBL Trade Radio?
It might be.
A whole 10 days worth?
It might be.
Okay.
Fire up, Hutchie.
Let's hope not.
So I think that's just there's a little flag on him as well. He's probably the one of the 10 contracted players that didn't have the season that he would have liked, fell out of favour. And then when you look at guys like Beardman coming through, Morris nailing down his spot for the first time properly, and then ideal world Richardson being fit. So where does he fit in exactly? So
sure.
There's a flag on that.
Yeah, okay. That's going to be a really interesting watch because I feel like as good as that consistency has been for Perth and the Sixers, I feel like the league as a whole would be hating that and would love for so much more player movement, trades, rivalries, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think they'd be pretty keen to see a bit of movement.
The Scorchers have had big moves. They've had club greats move interstate. You think Brad Hogg, Sean Marsh, Cam Bancroft, Mike Hussey. Yeah. Marsh and Hogg in particular were guys that they were reluctant to give multi-year deals to. Sam Whiteman was a similar situation, reluctant to give him a multi-year deal, and he went elsewhere. So I feel like this feels like the biggest off-season potentially in Scorchers history, to be honest, as far as the calibre of guys that are going to be coming out, the calibre of guys that they would like to come in, the fact that when the draft comes around in August or early September, they're probably going to have to rethink the way they go about it and bring in a couple of genuine pieces. Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating, and it's going to be a very different looking Scorchers side when they line up at Optus next summer.
Certainly going to be an interesting few weeks to come. Jackson Barrett, thanks so much for your time, mate, and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thanks, Robbo. Cheers.
And to our listeners, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you stay tuned to thewest.com.au for all of the latest news and sport, and we'll chat to you next time.